From a paycheck that skyrocketed 6,000% to 50 minutes of footage butchered just days before release, the making of this sequel was more chaotic than anything on screen. An actor who thought he was the third lead watched himself become a background extra. A bus performed Hollywood's first ever high-speed cannon roll, and the film's actual title premise completely vanished from the final cut. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Another 48 Hours, 1990. Fact 1. Eddie Murphy's 6,000% salary jump. When Eddie Murphy signed on for the original 48 Hours back in 1982, he was a relative newcomer to Hollywood films, and his paycheck reflected that inexperience. Murphy earned just $450,000 for his breakout role as the fast-talking convict Reggie Hammond, a respectable sum for a first-time leading man, but nowhere near superstar territory. Fast forward 8 years to the sequel, and Murphy's bargaining power had transformed completely. By 1990, he had become one of the biggest box office draws in the world, commanding an upfront salary of $12 million plus a significant percentage of the film's gross earnings. That represents an absolutely staggering 6,000% increase from his original paycheck, one of the most dramatic salary jumps in Hollywood history for a returning role. The disparity between the two leads became equally dramatic. While Murphy's compensation skyrocketed into the stratosphere, his co-star Nick Nolte received $3 million for reprising his role as the gruff detective Jack Cates. To put this in perspective, Murphy earned 4 times what Nolte made, even though both actors shared roughly equal screen time and billing. This massive pay gap reflected the harsh reality of Hollywood economics in the early 90s. Murphy had spent the 8 years between films delivering hit after hit, including Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cop, and Coming to America, each one cementing his status as a guaranteed moneymaker. Nolte, while respected and talented, simply didn't have the same box office clout. The studio knew that Murphy's name alone would sell tickets, and they paid accordingly. This salary negotiation set a precedent for sequel deals throughout the 90s, proving that star power could completely reshape the financial dynamics of a film franchise. Fact 2. 50 Minutes butchered 1 week before release. Another 48 Hours was originally a much longer and more complex film than audiences ever got to see. Director Walter Hill's initial cut ran approximately 145 minutes, a sprawling action thriller that took its time developing characters, relationships, and plot threads. The studio felt confident about this version and was preparing for a summer release when disaster struck in the form of unexpected competition. Total Recall, the Arnold Schwarzenegger science fiction blockbuster, opened strong and exceeded all box office projections, sending shockwaves through Paramount's executive offices. Studio brass panicked, convinced that audiences wouldn't sit through a lengthy action sequel when they could watch Arnold instead. Their solution was both drastic and devastating. Just 1 week before Another 48 Hours was scheduled to premiere in theaters, Paramount ordered massive cuts to the film. Editors worked around the clock to slash 50 minutes from the runtime, reducing the movie to a lean 95 minutes. This wasn't careful trimming or thoughtful restructuring. This was a butcher job performed under extreme time pressure with entire subplots, character development scenes, and crucial exposition removed wholesale. The result was a theatrical release riddled with plot holes, jarring continuity errors, and story beats that no longer made sense. Characters would reference events that never happened on screen. Relationships would suddenly shift without explanation. Entire sequences felt disconnected from what came before and after them. The cast and crew were horrified when they saw what had been done to their work. Actors discovered their performances had been reduced to fragments, with emotional moments and important dialogue left on the cutting room floor. The film's narrative coherence suffered tremendously, leaving audiences confused and critics unimpressed. This last-minute panic editing became infamous in Hollywood as a cautionary tale about studio interference. Fact 3. Brian James lost every major scene. Actor Brian James, a distinctive character actor known for his imposing presence and memorable villain roles, believed he had landed a career-defining part in Another 48 Hours. During filming, James worked extensively on what he understood to be the third lead role in the movie, a substantial character with significant screen time and important connections to the main plot. He filmed numerous scenes, developed his character's backstory and motivations, and worked closely with both Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte throughout production. James left the set feeling confident that this high-profile sequel would elevate his career to the next level and give him the kind of showcase role he'd been working toward for years. The crushing reality hit when James attended a screening of the finished film. As he sat in the darkened theater watching Another 48 Hours unspool on screen, he realized with growing horror that his performance had been almost entirely eliminated. Scene after scene that he'd filmed was simply gone, cut from the theatrical release during that infamous last-minute editing process. What remained was barely recognizable as the character he'd created. James later described his reaction with bitter disappointment, saying his role had been so severely reduced that he looked like nothing more than a dress extra, the kind of background performer who fills out a crowd scene without any actual character work. This wasn't a case of a supporting role being slightly trimmed. James had essentially been erased from the movie. The studio's decision to cut 50 minutes meant that entire storylines disappeared, and James's character apparently wasn't deemed essential to the stripped-down version they were rushing to theaters. For James, it was a devastating professional blow, watching months of work vanish without explanation or warning. Fact 4. The title makes no sense. The film is called Another 48 Hours, a title that clearly references the original movie's time-limited premise, where convict Reggie Hammond was released from prison for exactly 48 hours to help Detective Jack Cates catch a killer. The first film's entire structure revolved around that ticking clock, with characters constantly aware of how much time remained before Reggie had to return to custody. Anyone watching the sequel would naturally assume that the title indicates a similar time constraint driving the plot forward, perhaps another urgent situation requiring Reggie's help for a specific 48-hour period. Except that assumption would be completely wrong, because the phrase 48 hours is never spoken, referenced, or explained anywhere in the theatrical cut of the movie. This bizarre situation is a direct result of those catastrophic last-minute cuts made 1 week before release. According to people involved with the production, the original longer version did include a scene that explained why the title made sense, establishing that Reggie once again had a 48-hour window to help Cates solve a crime. That explanatory scene was among the 50 minutes of footage removed when Paramount panicked about the runtime. The studio apparently never considered that eliminating this key piece of exposition would make their own title meaningless. They were so focused on competing with Total Recall that they didn't stop to think about how confusing it would be for audiences to watch a movie called Another 48 Hours, where no one ever mentions 48 hours. The result is a peculiar disconnect where the movie's marketing, posters, and title promise a specific premise that the actual film never delivers or addresses. Characters act with urgency, but no particular time limit is ever established or referenced. It's as if someone titled a film High Noon, but removed all references to time and the approaching train. Fact 5. Frank McRae's disappearing act. Frank McRae had delivered a memorable performance in the original 48 Hours as Captain Hayden, the perpetually frustrated police captain who had to deal with Jack Cates's unconventional methods and rule-breaking behavior. McRae's character provided some of the first film's comic relief, bellowing at Cates about departmental procedure while secretly respecting his detective's instincts. When the sequel went into production, McRae was brought back to reprise this role, filming multiple scenes where Captain Hayden once again found himself dealing with the chaos that followed Cates and Hammond wherever they went. McRae expected to have a solid supporting role in the sequel, continuing the character he'd established 8 years earlier. The massive editing that gutted the film's runtime also destroyed McRae's participation almost entirely. When another 48 Hours reached theaters, Captain Hayden had been reduced to the most minimal presence imaginable. If you watch the theatrical cut carefully, you can spot McRae for literally just a few seconds in background shots inside the police station, visible as other characters move through the scene, but without any dialogue, character moments, or acknowledgement of who he is. He received no credit for this appearance, not even an uncredited mention in the cast list, as if the studio wanted to pretend Captain Hayden simply didn't exist in this sequel. For fans of the original film who remembered Captain Hayden's dynamic with Cates, his absence was confusing and disappointing. The character had been part of what made the first movie's world feel lived in and authentic, and removing him left a noticeable gap. McRae joined the growing list of actors who discovered their work had been essentially erased by studio panic, their performances sacrificed in the rush to create a shorter, supposedly more commercial product. Fact 6. Eddie Murphy's secret screenwriting credit. Most people assume that Another 48 Hours was a studio-driven sequel, greenlit by executives eager to capitalize on the success of the original film. The reality is considerably more interesting and reveals Eddie Murphy's creative ambitions beyond just acting. Murphy didn't simply agree to reprise his role as Reggie Hammond when Paramount came calling. He actually conceived the story concept for the sequel himself and personally pitched it to director Walter Hill, convincing Hill that there was a worthwhile story to tell about these characters reuniting years after their first adventure. Murphy's involvement in developing the sequel's narrative went far beyond casual suggestions or improvisation on set. He received an official screenwriting credit for creating the story, but there's a twist that makes this fact particularly unusual. Instead of using his own famous name, Murphy chose to credit himself under the pseudonym Fred Broughton. This wasn't a legal issue or contractual requirement. Murphy made a deliberate choice to separate his screenwriting work from his acting persona, perhaps wanting the story to be judged on its own merits rather than being viewed as a vanity project by a movie star who wanted more creative control. The Fred Broughton pseudonym appeared in the film's credits, and for years, many people had no idea that this mysterious writer was actually Murphy himself. This level of creative involvement shows a different side of Murphy's career during this period. He wasn't content to simply show up and deliver his trademark charisma. He wanted to shape the narrative, develop his character's arc, and have a hand in determining where Reggie Hammond's story would go. The fact that he chose to do this under a fake name suggests a certain humility or desire for authenticity that doesn't match the typical image of major movie stars demanding creative control. Fact 7. Hollywood's first 60 MP H-bus cannon roll. The prison transport chase sequence in Another 48 Hours contains a stunt that looks spectacular on screen, but represents an even more impressive achievement in terms of technical innovation and daring. When the bus transporting Reggie Hammond crashes during the escape attempt, it doesn't simply tip over or skid to a stop like vehicles in most action movies. Instead, the massive bus performs a complete cannon roll while traveling at 60 miles per hour, flipping through the air in a controlled but violent rotation that had never been successfully achieved with a vehicle of that size at that speed. Stunt coordinator Alan Graff planned and executed this groundbreaking stunt, understanding that he was attempting something that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible in practical stunt work. A cannon roll uses a specially designed pneumatic device hidden inside the vehicle that fires at a precise moment, providing the force needed to lift one side of the vehicle and initiate the roll. Getting this right with a full-size bus moving at highway speed required extensive calculations, testing, and nerves of steel from the stunt driver who had to trust that the engineering would work exactly as planned. One miscalculation could have resulted in the bus tumbling uncontrollably or the driver suffering serious injury. The stunt community recognized what Graff had accomplished, even if general audiences might not have understood the technical achievement they were watching. Decades later, When The Hollywood Reporter looked back at the best stunts of 1990, they specifically acknowledged that this bus cannon roll represented a milestone in practical stunt work. It demonstrated that with proper planning and execution, stunt coordinators could achieve spectacular action sequences that looked impossible, all without computer-generated effects or digital enhancement. The bus roll remains a landmark moment in stunt history, even if the film itself didn't receive the acclaim that this technical achievement deserved. Fact 8. Box office numbers sparked industry controversy. The opening weekend box office performance of Another 48 Hours became the center of an unusual controversy that revealed how competitive and suspicious Hollywood studios were about each other's financial claims. Paramount Pictures announced that the film had earned $19.5 million during its opening weekend, a respectable number that suggested the sequel was performing well despite mixed reviews and difficult competition. This announcement should have been the end of the story, just another piece of industry data about how a summer release was performing at the box office. However, rival studios weren't buying Paramount's numbers. Carolco and TriStar Pictures, competitors in the summer movie battlefield, publicly disputed Paramount's claimed figures, suggesting the studio was inflating the actual box office take to create positive publicity and momentum for the film. This wasn't just gossip or speculation. The rival studios made their skepticism official and demanded proof, an extremely rare occurrence in an industry where studios generally accepted each other's reported numbers without challenge, even if everyone suspected occasional creative accounting. The situation escalated to the point where Paramount had no choice but to do something almost unprecedented. They opened their financial books to outside examination, allowing verification of the actual box office receipts from theaters across the country. This investigation revealed that Carolco and TriStar had been right to be suspicious. The real opening weekend gross for Another 48 Hours was $17.4 million, a full $2 million less than Paramount had claimed. This $2 million discrepancy might not sound enormous, but in percentage terms it represented more than a 10% inflation of the actual numbers, a significant exaggeration that damaged Paramount's credibility with both industry rivals and financial analysts who tracked box office performance. Fact 9. Reggie's Porsche gets a brutal welcome. One of the most memorable comedic moments in Another 48 Hours centers on Reggie Hammond's prized Porsche, a symbol of the success and freedom he's been dreaming about during his years in prison. Throughout the early part of the film, Reggie talks about this car with genuine affection and pride. It represents everything he's been working toward and everything that was taken away from him when he went to prison. The Porsche isn't just a vehicle, it's Reggie's connection to the life he used to have and hopes to reclaim. When he's finally released from prison, one of his first priorities is seeing this beloved car again, perhaps imagining the moment he'll slide behind the wheel and remember what freedom feels like. The scene plays out with perfect comic timing that captures the cruel irony that seems to follow Reggie everywhere. After his release, Reggie approaches his beautiful Porsche with obvious excitement, finally reunited with this prized possession after years of separation. He reaches for the car alarm remote, probably expecting to hear that satisfying chirp that confirms his car is still his, still working, still waiting for him. Instead, the instant Reggie presses the alarm button, the entire Porsche explodes in a massive fireball, completely destroyed in one spectacular moment. The explosion isn't a small fire or minor damage. The car is obliterated, gone in seconds, taking Reggie's dreams and expectations with it. This brutal gag works because it's so unexpected and so definitive. There's no salvaging the car, no fixing what happened. Reggie's prize is simply gone, and his reaction sells the moment perfectly. It's a microcosm of everything that goes wrong for Reggie in this sequel, a reminder that even when things seem to be looking up, disaster is always one button press away. The scene became one of the most quoted and remembered moments from the film. Fact 10. record-breaking glass destruction. Roger Ebert, one of America's most influential film critics, noticed something unusual about Another 48 Hours when he watched it for his review. Beyond the plot, performances, or direction, Ebert observed that the film appeared to set some kind of indoor record for the amount of glass that is broken throughout its 95-minute runtime. This wasn't a casual observation or throwaway line in his review. Ebert was calling attention to the sheer volume of windows, mirrors, glass doors, and other breakable surfaces that get shattered during the film's action sequences, a level of destruction that seemed excessive even by the standards of late 80s and early 90s action movies that were known for their appetite for mayhem. Director Walter Hill made a deliberate stylistic choice to stage fight scenes and chase sequences where bodies constantly crashed through glass surfaces. Characters don't just fall down when they're hit or shot, they fly backward through windows, leaving explosive showers of shattered glass in their wake. They get thrown through glass doors, smash through mirrors, and crash through transparent barriers of every description. Hill understood that breaking glass creates spectacular visual moments, with fragments catching the light and creating dynamic motion in the frame. It also adds a visceral quality to the violence, suggesting real impact and real damage rather than the sanitized action that characterized earlier eras of filmmaking. The commitment to glass destruction extended throughout the production. The property department had to source hundreds of breakaway glass panels, those specially designed props made from materials that shatter safely without creating the deadly sharp edges of real glass. Stunt performers had to practice falling through these barriers safely while making it look violent and uncontrolled. The cleanup between takes must have been extensive, with film crews sweeping up fake glass debris after every shot. Hill's dedication to this visual motif gave Another 48 Hours a distinctive look and energy. Fact 11. Yet another 48 hours almost happened. The story of Jack Cates and Reggie Hammond almost continued beyond Another 48 Hours, with Paramount developing ideas for a third installment that would have completed a trilogy of buddy cop adventures. The proposed sequel had a premise that would have completely inverted the dynamic that defined the first two films. In both 48 Hours and Another 48 Hours, Reggie was the ex-convict who needed Jack's help to navigate the dangerous situations they found themselves in, with Jack serving as the street-smart cop who knew how to work the system. The planned third film would have flipped this relationship entirely. The concept that was being developed would have sent Nick Nolte's character, Jack Cates, to prison, presumably for some crime committed during his years of bending the rules and operating in moral gray areas as a detective. This premise would have forced Eddie Murphy's Reggie Hammond into the position of being the one with freedom and resources, the one who had to mount a rescue operation. Instead of a cop breaking a convict out of prison to help solve a case, audiences would have watched a reformed convict breaking his cop friend out of prison, probably to clear his name or stop some larger conspiracy. The title that was being considered was Yet Another 48 Hours, continuing the pattern established by the franchise while suggesting that this might be the final chapter in their story. However, the disappointing box office performance and critical reception of Another 48 Hours killed any momentum for a third film. Paramount decided that the franchise had run its course, and both Murphy and Nolte moved on to other projects. The relationship between Murphy and the studio had also become strained, making further collaboration less appealing. Yet Another 48 Hours remained just an idea, never progressing beyond the concept stage. Fact 12. Murphy's 7-film streak ended here. Eddie Murphy entered 1990 as one of the most commercially reliable actors in Hollywood, with a box office track record that very few performers could match. Starting with 48 Hours in 1982, Murphy had starred in 6 consecutive films that all opened at #1 at the domestic box office: 48 Hours, Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cop, Beverly Hills Cop 2, The Golden Child, and Coming to America. Each of these films debuted in the top position, proving that Murphy's name alone was enough to drive audiences to theaters on opening weekend, regardless of reviews or competition. When Another 48 Hours premiered, it continued this remarkable streak, opening at #1 and giving Murphy 7 consecutive chart-topping debuts. This achievement represented one of the most impressive box office streaks in Hollywood history up to that point. 7 films in a row opening at #1 demonstrated consistent star power that transcended genre, director, or even quality. Murphy had become a guaranteed event, the kind of actor whose new releases were treated as must-see entertainment by millions of moviegoers. However, this streak also represented a peak that Murphy wouldn't reach again for a considerable time. After Another 48 Hours, Murphy's next several releases did not open at #1. Harlem Nights, Boomerang, The Distinguished Gentleman, Beverly Hills Cop 3, and Vampire in Brooklyn all had respectable performances but didn't debut in the top position. It would take 6 years before Murphy returned to the top of the box office on opening weekend. The Nutty Professor in 1996 finally restored Murphy to that #1 debut position, marking a career resurgence and proving he could still command massive opening weekends. The gap between these two #1 openings showed how the film industry had evolved during the 90s and how even the biggest stars could see their automatic commercial appeal diminish over time. Fact 13. The Busboys song was recycled. The Boys Are Back in Town, performed by the Busboys, became one of the most memorable elements of the original 48 Hours. A high-energy rock song that perfectly captured the rebellious spirit and aggressive swagger of the film's 2 leads. The song played during key moments in the first movie and became so associated with the franchise that many people couldn't hear it without thinking of Jack Cates and Reggie Hammond causing chaos across San Francisco. The song's driving rhythm and defiant lyrics seemed custom-made for the buddy cop genre that the original film helped define. When Another 48 Hours went into production 8 years later, the filmmakers made the decision to bring back The Boys Are Back in Town for the sequel. This wasn't a new version or a cover by a different artist. The production used the same exact Busboys recording from 1982, essentially recycling a song that audiences had already heard throughout the first film. The decision to reuse this track was presumably meant to create continuity and nostalgia, reminding viewers of what they loved about the original, while signaling that the sequel would deliver more of the same energy and chemistry between the 2 stars. This choice revealed something about how sequels approached music and branding during this era. Rather than finding a new anthem that could define Another 48 Hours as its own entity, the filmmakers relied on the established association that audiences already had with this particular song. It was a safe choice, a way of triggering positive memories and expectations from fans of the original. However, it also suggested a lack of confidence or imagination, an unwillingness to let the sequel establish its own identity separate from what came before. The 8-year gap between the 2 films made this recycling even more noticeable, as if no cultural or musical evolution had occurred in the time between. Fact 14. Murphy and Paramount's public feud. The troubled production and disappointing reception of Another 48 Hours led to a very public breakdown in the relationship between Eddie Murphy and Paramount Pictures, the studio that had been home to most of Murphy's biggest hits throughout the 1980s. What should have been a triumphant reunion for a profitable franchise instead became a bitter finger-pointing exercise, with both sides blaming each other for the film's underperformance and damaged reputation. This wasn't private griping or quiet disappointment. Both Murphy and Paramount executives made their complaints public, airing their frustrations in ways that were unusual for the normally diplomatic world of Hollywood business relationships. Murphy's grievances centered on what he perceived as inadequate support from the studio. He accused Paramount of failing to advertise and promote Another 48 Hours properly, suggesting that the marketing campaign didn't match the investment that a major summer release deserved. Murphy also complained that Paramount had changed the film's release date, potentially affecting its box office performance by putting it in direct competition with other blockbusters when a different date might have given it more breathing room. From Murphy's perspective, he had delivered his performance and fulfilled his contractual obligations, but the studio had failed to hold up its end of the partnership. Paramount fired back with its own accusations, claiming that Murphy hadn't promoted the film sufficiently. The studio suggested that Murphy's lack of enthusiasm during the promotional tour and his limited availability for interviews and publicity appearances had hurt the film's ability to connect with audiences. This very public dispute damaged a relationship that had been enormously profitable for both parties throughout the previous decade. The fallout affected Murphy's subsequent projects with Paramount and contributed to his decision to explore relationships with other studios for future films. Fact 15. Recognized for best stunts 35 years later. For decades, Another 48 Hours was remembered primarily for its troubled production, its butchered editing, and its disappointing reception, rather than for its actual achievements. The film's reputation was so damaged by the circumstances of its release that few people took the time to acknowledge what the stunt team had actually accomplished during production. The elaborate action sequences, dangerous practical stunts, and impressive coordination that went into creating the film's chase scenes and fight choreography were overlooked in favor of discussing everything that had gone wrong behind the scenes and at the box office. In 2025, 35 years after the film's original release, The Hollywood Reporter published a retrospective piece looking back at the action movies of 1990. When evaluating which films from that year featured the best stunt work, the publication made a surprising choice. Despite the presence of other major action releases from 1990, The Hollywood Reporter retroactively listed Another 48 Hours as having the best stunts of that entire year. This recognition finally acknowledged what stunt professionals had known all along, that the practical action work in the film represented some of the most ambitious and skillfully executed stunt coordination of its era. This late recognition vindicated the stunt team led by Alan Graff, who had pushed boundaries and risked their safety to create spectacular action sequences that looked real because they were real. The bus cannon roll, the motorcycle crashes, the fights through glass windows, and all the other dangerous practical stunts deserved appreciation regardless of the film's other problems. The fact that it took 35 years for this recognition to arrive shows how difficult it can be for technical achievements to overcome a film's negative reputation. Sometimes the passage of time and changing perspectives allow people to see past a movie's flaws and acknowledge the craftsmanship that existed within it.